Brussels, Belgium, September 8, 2025. The European Union has condemned a deadly shooting at a bus stop in East Jerusalem, calling it yet another grim reminder of why a ceasefire is urgently needed in the escalating war between Israel and Hamas. The attack, carried out by Palestinian gunmen, left multiple civilians dead and wounded. Within hours, EU spokesperson Anouar El Anouni addressed reporters in Brussels, emphasising the bloc's alarm at the spiralling violence and its human toll. Standing before the press, El Anouni expressed the EU's grief and frustration at the unending cycle of bloodshed in the region. He spoke in measured but firm tones, describing the attack as part of a broader pattern of civilian suffering that had reached unbearable levels. Anouar El Anouni said, "We condemn this attack as we condemn all loss of lives, which actually must stop now. We call for de-escalation, and this shows how necessary and critical a ceasefire is. Civilians on both sides, both Palestinians and Israelis, have suffered for far too long and far too much, and this must end now, and it is high time to break this cycle of violence." This statement, delivered in English, was broadcast widely and became the focal point of international coverage of the EU's stance. His words underscored not only the condemnation of the Jerusalem attack, but also the urgent demand for all parties to halt fighting. The incident in East Jerusalem unfolded during a tense moment in the conflict. Armed men opened fire on civilians waiting at a bus stop, instantly transforming an ordinary morning commute into a scene of chaos and tragedy. Ambulances rushed to the site, security forces sealed off the area, and media images showed shattered glass and pools of blood on the pavement. For many Israelis, the attack reinforced fears that the conflict with Hamas was not contained to Gaza, but had spread to daily life in the annexed eastern part of the city. For Palestinians, however, it reflected the combustible mix of anger, despair, and violence that has been simmering amid the war in Gaza and long-standing tensions in Jerusalem. The shooting came as Israel's military campaign in Gaza intensified, with heavy bombardments, ground operations, and mounting civilian casualties. International observers, including humanitarian organisations, have repeatedly called attention to the staggering toll the conflict is taking on ordinary people. The EU's response reflects growing frustration in European capitals about both the human costs of the war and the lack of political will from either side to negotiate even a temporary truce. Brussels has consistently supported Israel's right to defend itself, while also urging restraint and adherence to international humanitarian law. At the same time, it has highlighted the plight of Palestinian civilians trapped in Gaza's conflict zone. While El Anouni's remarks focused on the immediate incident, they also echoed the broader EU strategy of trying to prevent the conflict from spiralling into a regional war. Diplomats in Brussels have been working behind the scenes to press both Israel and Hamas toward dialogue, while also coordinating with the United Nations and Arab states. The EU has already funneled millions of euros in humanitarian aid to Gaza, with pledges of further assistance if a ceasefire can be secured. But European leaders remain divided on how much pressure to apply to Israel, with some insisting that the Jewish state must be held accountable for excessive use of force, while others emphasise the need to first neutralise Hamas's attacks. The EU's call for calm comes amid a chorus of international voices warning that the cycle of retaliation risks spiralling further out of control. The United States has also urged restraint, but has continued to provide military and political backing to Israel. Meanwhile, Middle Eastern states have condemned the violence and pressed for an immediate halt to military operations. In this environment, El Anouni's words carry symbolic weight. By condemning both the Jerusalem attack and the broader violence, the EU sought to frame itself as a balanced actor, recognising Israeli suffering while simultaneously defending Palestinian civilians. Images of the aftermath in East Jerusalem circulated on television screens across Europe, fueling public anger and calls for stronger EU action. Civil society groups have pressured European governments to do more than issue statements, including considering sanctions or diplomatic measures if the conflict does not de-escalate. El Anouni's message, "This must end now, and it is high time to break this cycle of violence," resonated strongly in this context. By highlighting the suffering on both sides, the EU signalled that it sees no purely military solution to the crisis. For now, the situation remains precarious. Israeli security forces have stepped up operations in East Jerusalem, arresting suspects linked to the shooting, while the military campaign in Gaza shows no sign of slowing. The EU's hope is that its diplomatic weight, combined with mounting global pressure, can help nudge the parties toward a ceasefire agreement. But whether the EU's call will carry influence remains uncertain. In past conflicts, similar appeals have often gone unheard, with fighting continuing until both sides were exhausted. Still, the EU's intervention reflects a recognition that the stakes are higher than ever. The attack in East Jerusalem was not just another tragic episode, but a reminder of how quickly violence can spill over and destabilise the entire region. In Brussels, El Anouni's statement summed up the EU's stance clearly. We condemn this attack as we condemn all loss of lives. We call for de-escalation. It is high time to break this cycle of violence. The words were carefully chosen, but left little doubt about the EU's position. The war must stop, the killing must end, and both Palestinians and Israelis deserve a chance to live in peace. We condemn this attack as we condemn all loss of lives, which actually must stop now. We call for de-escalation, and this shows how necessary and critical a ceasefire is. Civilians on both sides, both Palestinians and Israelis, have suffered for far too long and far too much, and this must end now. And it is high time to break this cycle of violence.
For far too long and far too much, and this must end now. And it is high time to break this cycle of violence.